appreciate it if you would stop Rob Taylor from blathering on and on.
Opinions expressed by the talk show hosts, callers, or guests on the Rob Taylor Report do not necessarily represent the opinions of the hosting platform, subsidiaries, sponsors, or possibly anyone else on the planet or the known universe. From the tinfoil and lead-lined broadcast bunker on the beautiful south coast of Oregon, it's the Rob Taylor Report. So strap yourself in. Your political therapy session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the nearly famous Rob Taylor.
I'm coming to you live from the Restoration Worship Center, and I'm going to take you inside. We're going to listen to someone else speak tonight because I'm sure you're tired of listening to me speak all the time. And we've got Dr. Frank, Dr. Douglas Frank. The man is a genius. He's figured out a lot of the patterns in the voting elections, and we are understanding a lot more now than we ever have before. And so I'm going to take you in so we can watch Dr. Frank. If you'll all join me, I'd appreciate it. Go ahead. Babies first. How you doing?
Doing well. How about you?
Pretty darn good.
Yeah, so who's taking the picture?
I'm waiting for the picture.
Who's taking the picture?
I'm waiting for the picture. I'm waiting for the picture. Donating $1. Get up. Get up.
All of that.
Yeah.
I agree.
Get up.
So
We're waiting for introductions.
Because give it to her. You're right. Yes.
Because
Okay.
the money flows goes to her.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, thank you.
I'll give you what? Whatever.
Thank you.
So what kind of donation do you? I'm with that.
Our name has been good.
Yeah.
Hi, Rob.
Hello.
Hey, it's the Rob Taylor Report. Not to be confused with the Rob Taylor Report, which will happen at the commissioners' meeting tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning.
So Dr. Frank will be at the commissioners' meeting tomorrow.
That is correct, and he is on the agenda, and he's going to be probably give a 10 or maybe 15-minute dissertation. Rod will be there, and John Sweet will be there. Bob Main is fishing in the Northwest Territories, so he will not be present.
We should film live from fishing to do the commissioners' meeting.
Send me to the Northwest Territories to fish,
Yeah.
and then I'll like find him and film him for
We'll
a second.
do that, right?
Sure, that'll work out great.
Hi, Vanessa. I'm doing quite well. Working hard on the ranch?
That's overtime.
Overtime now. I knew you were going to say that. I figured since I'm working more in the yard, you've got to be working double time on the ranch. So
The hotel, the ag store, it's fixing people, subcontractors.
nice.
It's the pay for the rain tax, you know, all that stuff.
Wow, I'm definitely going to send this to some Portlandiers who have no clue where our food comes from. And maybe I should come out there and film you guys working so they understand. Nice, nice. That's the thing. People don't realize what you got to go through.
Did you know?
That's why I got the Rumble account to back up on YouTube.
And some more people might still filter in. Our first ever Monday night CRL meeting. Yeah. Awesome to have all of you here who are here. I appreciate you being here. And so we're not going to do the regular CRL thing tonight at all. We're not even going to do the 50-50. However, we are going to take up an offering to help defray the costs that are incurred to put this on tonight. So whatever you can contribute to that, there's been a substantial amount of money expended, and we want to try to help support Dr. Frank's ongoing work as well. So if you're able to contribute, we're going to just pass one of these baskets around as we get started, and it'll just keep making its way around the room as the meeting goes on. And then it'll go on the table right where Rob Taylor is standing right there. So if you missed it coming around, you can drop something else in there. And we appreciate that very much. So without further ado, I don't think Pastor Dan's making it tonight. Is that right? Okay, so let's open this meeting in some prayer. Father God, thank you so much for your glory, for your grace, for your abundance. Lord, we're grateful to live in a nation where we can still express ourselves, Lord, and still express the ideas of freedom that you instituted among men. And Father, we want to glorify you in that. We want to edify our fellow man, and we want to serve others in the interest of the liberty that you designed, that you created, and that you have promised. And Lord, we want to be instruments toward the ultimate liberty in Christ that all men need, and for all who haven't yet found it, Lord, we pray that. Father, thank you for this evening. We pray that you would anoint the words of Dr. Frank tonight, and as well tomorrow at the Board of Commissioners meeting. And Father, we pray that the truth would be fully revealed, that all things good and great and promising that you have anointed, Lord, come to pass. And we lift it before you in Jesus' name. Okay, so I'm going to start this around, and Marty is going to introduce. Marty has an intro.
What do you know? I've got an intro. It's the official Dr. Frank biography. And by the way, Dr. Frank is not charging us to come to this meeting, but he did fly out here and is staying in a hotel near here, and he's, so anything we can do to defray those expenses is greatly appreciated. And so with that said, but like I said, he's not charging, it's just, it helps defray expenses, clarity, about stuff. But anyway, Dr. Douglas G. Frank is a world-renowned physicist with 60 peer-reviewed scientific publications, including cover and feature articles in the world's leading scientific journals, and Nobel Prize nominee in chemistry. His PhD is in surface electroanalytical chemistry, which combines chemistry, physics, electronics, advanced computing, and mathematics for the manipulation and investigation of molecules on surfaces. That's a mouthful. He left university in 1996 and has done some extensive consulting, inventing, and technical manufacturing, including electron microscopes, laser scanners, automated precision manufacturing, and quality control devices. He's internationally known for his contributions to the cleaning and polishing industry, and also the bowling sport and manufacturing industry. You did something on that, I guess.
Stay in your lane.
Anyway, so since December of 2020, Dr. Frank has been working incessantly for election reform with grassroots teams in over 48 states, earning the title of the Johnny Appleseed of election integrity. He's met in person with dozens of Secretary of States, Attorney Generals, legislatures, and hundreds of local election officials. He has testified formally in several legal and legislative proceedings. Dr. Frank was featured on 2 of Mike Lindell's documentaries, Scientific Proof and Absolute Interference, because he discovered several of the algorithms being employed to manipulate our elections. Dr. Frank is widely known for his informative and engaging presentations on a wide range of topics, including COVID, pandemic, climate change, and complementary relationship between science and faith. He served as the church music minister for 40 years, married his high school sweetheart, has 3 children in the 20s, including his popular special needs daughter, Melody. And everybody remember the quicker picker upper?
Yeah.
Well, he invented the test that figured out that Bounty was the quicker picker upper. So there you go. He's done everything. And he's and talked to us about some of the interesting and curious things in Hughes County. So if he's around here somewhere, there he is.
So my schedulers, I have 2 people that volunteer to do my scheduling all the time. They insisted I write out this long bio, and I said, no, just give them a few bullet points. But no, Dr. Frank, everybody needs to know these things. They are defending me everywhere, right? So forgive that. I told him just pick a couple and do that. So, you might remember too that you've heard that saying, Bounty is the quicker picker upper. You heard that saying. Well, it wasn't at first. Procter & Gamble got sued by a European company in 2001 who said theirs was quicker. And so they came to my business in Cincinnati and said, we need a way to measure this. Because it was always just an advertising slogan, and we got to have a way to measure this. It's because we're going to court. And so I said, well, okay, go away and come back in a week. They came back in a week. I had a benchtop demonstration of a way to do it. They liked the idea. They gave me a contract. I got going on it. And they liked it so much, they ordered 4 more of the devices they use for quality control in all their manufacturing plants. But we ran into a little snafu, because about 3/4 of the way through, I had my first machine going really well. All the technique I was refining it on one before I did too much work on the other 3. And I called them up and I said, well, I have good news and bad news. The good news is these machines are really working well. The bad news is you're number 2. And they were really happy about it. So they pulled that ad. They pulled that ad off of the line. And so for about 5 years, that was not the ad. And they had to work on it. But now they are, and that's why it's back again. So that's it's an interesting, most people don't get to know what I do because I like this working with companies and, and signing NDAs and things. But that one, at least I can talk about that. It's been long enough. Johnson Wax as a big customer of mine, Windex and then Ecolab for Pledge and Dust and all these surface cleaners, which is how it got me into bowling. But don't get me going the wrong way. It's good to be with you. I just made a post today on my social media why I left academics in 1996. And it's because it was already so corrupt, I could not handle it anymore. I don't want to go into the stories. I got plenty to tell you.
I watched it, and they were talking about trans.
Oh, you watched my post today?
Yes, I watched it, or I listened to it while I was showering.
You watched it too?
Yeah, but it was talking about the trans community and like how the academia actually passed his journal
Yes.
all the way through, like 7 of them or
Yes.
something,
Yes.
off of just lewd
It's an
stuff.
amazing interview, and it
Yeah.
confirms what I've been saying for years. I guess you can turn down the lights a little up here too, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It makes the screen easier to see. I think.
It's shocking.
It is shocking. In 1996, I was faced with that in my own hard science community. It wasn't even a politically charged community. It was already that way. And I just I couldn't see spending the next 40 years of my life and career where truth didn't matter. And you had to play politics all the time to get money. It's like, well, I care about that. That's not what I'm doing. So I left academics in 1996. And I had a great time, great career, doing consulting for businesses all around the world. And people always say, bowling, how does bowling come into it? Well, bowling is a surface sport. People don't realize, but if you ever watch a real bowler, they take a ball and they spin it. And so it's slipping. That's friction. That's a surface phenomenon. It's slipping and sliding down the lane. And when it comes out of the oil, because they oil the first 40 or 60 feet, it's spinning and actually grabs the lane and braces into the pins from an angle. Because the statistics work out that if you come in at a 5.6 degree angle, you'll average much higher than if you come in straight. So there's no way to come in straight from a long, narrow road. So you have to throw it out spinning and coming in from an angle. So, do you want me to keep going? It's physics. What is physics, man? It's like something spinning and sliding and smashing and banging. That's physics, man. That's about a basic physics to get to. So I have about 15 bowling products, and I just support them even this week. Although I haven't been doing anything really substantial since I started this work. Craziness. It's good to be with you. Tomorrow I'm going to be in. So if you'd like to hear tonight, tell your friends to come see me. I'm going to be in. I just been. Now.
Yeah,
Yeah. And Coos. I mean, Coos. Yeah. Tomorrow I'm going to be in Indiana, and then the next day I'm going to be in Columbia. So, and then I'm not going to be back again for I think about a month and a half. But I'm the schedulers working on it right now because you guys are on fire, and I want to be here with you. It's important. The best thing about me is that I'm everywhere. I've been like in 48 states, and I'm on the road all the time, and so I feel the temperature. I know what's going on everywhere, and this is not just merely a political revival, which I hope you're feeling, but also a spiritual revival. And the two are going together, and really, without the spiritual revival, political revival is worthless anyway. So I'm glad to be in the church. Thanks for hosting the church. All the action in 1776 was in the churches and the taverns, and we need to be in the taverns today. So anyway, this is the way my talks usually go. How long do you want me to go?
Until people fall asleep.
Okay, very good. I'll be watching when I see your head dropping and stuff. But I'll give you some introduction in history. This is important. What I'm going to try to do during this time, this first section, is I'm going to try to take you on a journey. Not just because I want you to know about my journey, because I'm going to try to speed up your awakening. I'm going to have you go through an awakening here, change the way you think about this. And I don't want you to take 3 years to learn it. Like I want to speed you through it. So I'm going to take you through a little journey, and that's why I'm doing it. Then I'm going to tell you what the problem is, and I think I'll be explaining that along the way, but I'll definitely crystallize it for you. And I know I'm going to talk about your own neck of the woods, Coos County, where I am now. People always tell me, I was just in Polk County last couple of weeks ago, right? First words out of their mouth, "Oh, Dr. Frank, we don't have any fraud here. We have a really good clerk. She's honest. She's honest. We have really good commissioners. They're honest. And so we don't have any fraud here." And all that does, and I hear that every county I go to, except for the big obvious blue ones. Okay. And All that shows is that they don't understand what the problem is. And so I have to kind of take them out of their way of thinking and change the way of thinking. And then they realize, oh my goodness, we're a huge problem. Yes, but I have to kind of wake them up and bring them along. So I always show data from your own neck of the woods. And I'll show you, I spent most of today working just on this one county, of putting in place some software that allows me to do the whole state. But I'll show you what that looks like. So you need to know it's local. And I'm going to try to wake you up to that. And then I'm not just going to say, look how bad the country is. I'm going to say, here's the solution. And this isn't a solution that I came up with sitting in front of a fireplace with my pipe one night, being smarty pants. This is me trying multiple things every day since 2020, December, and figuring out what's working and what's not working. And I want to show you that so you'll understand, because too many people are doing the wrong things. Now, the way this is a war, you have to think of it like a war. It's a spiritual war, it's a political war, it's a war for the very essence of our country. And I've evolved. I think of each state, I think of the beachhead in that state. And I think we have it's Polk County. But when you land on the Normandy beaches, because we're eventually going to get to Berlin, but when you land on the Normandy beaches, if that's your only landing zone, that's tough. I want to get Omaha Beach too, and I want to get other beachheads, and maybe this county is an adjacent another beachhead. Let's see. Yeah. I want it to be. I want to help you be that way, and think of me as like I'm an arms dealer. I'm giving you ammunition, and I'm giving you guidance, and I'm showing you what to do. And I'm just going to make this. I just got to tell you this quick story. So my father and I have a really good relationship. And he'll come to me and he'll say something to me. And when he has a certain way of communicating, he'll say, son, do what I tell you. And when he says that, what it means is what I'm about to hear, we can discuss, we can argue, we can have a long discussion, examine the facts, do a study, but he's going to be right, and he knows it, so don't ask questions, just do what I tell you. And that's how I feel all the time when I'm sitting with people like this. It's like, I just want you to do what I tell you. And it's not because I'm so smart, it's because I've already failed 73 other ways. And this is the way that's working. I want you to get that. So if I sound arrogant or like it's my way or the highway, it's not. It's just gonna be like, do what I tell you. Because we know, we've already been down this road. Anyways, I'm hoping you are also a beachhead here. This just happened. I was just there a week ago now in Polk County. We turned out, I got to speak at the Board of Commissioners meeting. And this was as we were filing in, but we had about 100 people on the streets waving flags and waving signs. And then we overflowed the room with people, and we had about 30 minutes of testimony. The commissioners allowed us to do that. They gave us the whole time. It was excellent. And you could watch that. So if you want to watch what they said, it's on Rumble. This is the Rumble. Yeah, it's 39 minutes, but that included a little streaming ahead of time. So it's about 30 minutes of the citizens. And that was not one after another getting up and ranting and saying the same thing. We spent hours preparing what everybody was going to do. Nobody duplicated anything. Okay, so it was a really good presentation. And so you can hear what that sounds like. You need to do this in your commissioner meeting. Now, the purpose of this meeting was to announce what we were going to be doing and what we wanted. We didn't show any evidence yet. Well, we alluded to some, but there's a whole strategy here. And, when you're in a war, you don't just grab your guns and run at the enemy. You lose that way. When you're in a war, you form a war council, and you analyze the enemy, and you analyze yourself. You say, where are we strong? Where are we weak? Where are they strong? Where should we attack? How should we attack? And you plan mission after mission. This was just one of the first missions, and there's 2 or 3 more serious missions that are going to happen in the next several weeks and months. And I want you guys maybe landing a week or 2 later on Omaha Beach and joining the front. That's the way to think of it. So I'm hoping that happens. It was a great day, a very exciting day. A few of us stayed afterwards and took a picture together, this is history we're doing right now. Yeah. This is history. We're either recovering our country or losing it, but it's history. And right now we're on that precipice. Now, I also was in this movie. I don't know if you noticed that, but I was in this movie, and so I knew about Coastal County, and I'm like, why did that work for you guys? And I didn't remember. But it was a while back, quite some time ago. I guess it's like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago we did that movie. Yeah. So I've heard of you guys. I'm kind of shocked by your state. I was speaking down in Josephine County in a high school gymnasium, and it was on a Saturday, so no students were there. It was just we built the auditorium, and I took a break to go potty. And when I went in the bathroom, I saw a tampon machine on the wall, and so I whoops, and I went back out of the room real quick, and I looked. No, it was the men's bathroom, and yeah, there's a tampon machine hanging there. And so I went back in and did my business. When I went out back on the stage, I asked the organizer. I said, I thought I was in the wrong bathroom because there was a tampon machine hanging on the wall, and I said, no. That's our governor. Our governor's ordered that every male bathroom in every high school in the state has to have a tampon machine hanging in it. And they said if you were in the wrong bathroom, you would have tripped on the kitty litter box on the floor. Okay. Right. So that's Oregon.
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Whose fault is that? Your fault. And I have a good friend, Dave Bryan. He says he preaches to himself and he lets other people listen. I love that. So if it sounds like coming after you, I'm coming after you. I'm really coming after me because I was asleep till 2020 as well. And so it was us. We allowed this to happen on our watch, and it's our job to fix it. So anyway, I was also in this case with Tim Sipple's case up in Washington County. You might remember that. What happened was I was encouraging people to get voter rolls all around the country, and people got them. And by accident, the county clerk of Washington County gave them a complete backup of election management system. It was an accident. She didn't know what she was doing, honestly. So the whole court case, she was very defensive. Of course I know what I'm doing. Well, yeah, just gave them a complete backup of your system. Maybe you don't know what you're doing. All I needed was the vote. Okay, but anyway, when the state found out, when your Secretary of State found out, she panicked. She ordered AG to file a restraining order, and in that restraining order, it says, even when systems are not directly connected to networks, to attack through physical or wireless access. This is your AG admitting that your machines can go online, which we know they can. But the lovely thing about this lawsuit that I'll never forget, there were several wonderful moments. My favorite moment was when she was feeling all defensive. She was a lovely 70 years old, little Japanese lady, short stature. And she was like, everybody thinks I don't know how to run my systems. Yeah, she screwed up. But okay, but she says, but I'm training my replacement. I'm trying to retire this year. I'm training my replacement, and I can turn the modems on all by myself. And I don't even need a password. Wow. She said that in court. Under oath. I mean, this was like brilliant. And these were the computers that are behind the air gap that are not supposed to be able to communicate with the outside world. I mean, this was like it's like a wonderful moment. Okay, it's just wonderful. And of course, the article said this seems to contradict everything we've been told about the 2020 election in our community, right? They said, oh, they're not connected to the internet. They are not lying to you. They're sort of correct, but it's sort of like one of those, the definition of is kinds of things. It's like, well, it's not the internet. They're connected on an internal secure network that's on a federal secure network that isn't secure. Okay, and so when they say it's not on the internet, they're sort of right. Everybody knows what we're really saying, and they're using mealy-mouthed words to get away with it. Anyway, I think I'm gonna let that stand. Yeah.
So since you know all about the air gaps, I was actually on the Mike Bandel website, and I was trying to get WMDs for my county.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to ask all these questions to our elections official. You know our systems in Oregon. So
Yes,
is there a way that we can actually get WMDs without having to ask our county clerk all these ridiculous, they're not ridiculous, I'm sure, but since you know the systems more than a lot of the county clerks do, is it possible for you to maybe work with Mike to get us WMDs or no? Is that
WMDs, wireless monitoring devices. Only Mike Lindell would come up with.
Yeah.
He's a marketer, so he wants to market the stuff. What he did is he came up with a device that will detect everything that's communicating over wireless networks.
Right.
You can walk into a building and it'll tell you every device. I already have a device right there in my briefcase that'll do that. Okay. You don't need a wireless monitoring device.
They've been around a long
Sounds like it's my there, so I might just turn it down. Testing 1, 2. Okay, so you don't need a wireless monitoring device. But I just want to. This is not in order, but I might talk about this later. So
Sorry.
I'll just,
Okay.
this is a small group. We can have a good conversation.
Sorry
So I'll
about
just
that.
tell you a story.
Okay.
So in March of 2022, I was in Oklahoma, and I was given a talk to a group about twice this size, and the sheriff was in attendance. And I was showing them the section of the talk where I say, I can hear machines, I can tell whether they're online or not. And he was like, all right, you're on. Tomorrow, you and I we're driving out to the election building and we're gonna test all the machines. And I said, okay, I'm ready. So next morning he picks me up, we're in the car, in the patrol car, we're driving out to where they keep all the voting machines. And he gets a phone call from the Secretary of State of Oklahoma. And the Secretary of State of Oklahoma says, I have a cease and desist letter in my hand. You may not go out and use electronic devices to monitor those machines. And so he turned around and we went back to the hotel. And that very day, the legislature in Oklahoma called an emergency session and passed a state law making it illegal to do electronic surveillance at polling places.
Wow.
Okay.
They're being sweet.
So that sort of sets the tone around your question. Because what she's asking me is, Dr. Frank, can you get us some devices where we can prove our machines are online? If she's the clerk, why does she need a device to detect? All you have to do is open up the back cover and look at the motherboard and look at the modem. All we have to do is plug in, and this is what I did with Tina Peters in Colorado, Mesa County, Colorado, is we did forensic backups of her machines, and she swore up and down her machines couldn't go online. We found 36 modems and all the logs where they were reporting throughout the entire election. Okay, so really the reason I'm kind of reacting to her question, not in a bad way, but I'm spending more time on it, is it captures the essence of our problem. The essence of our problem is that we have to play funny games. Why do we have to play funny games? Whose election is this? It's your election. You and your own clerk. She's about to be a clerk next county court. She's about to be the new clerk. And she has to play games. Wait a minute. Isn't the clerk, isn't that the one we entrust with the authority to have access to everything? But even she doesn't have access. Well, wait a minute, then who does have access? Do you see where this is going? Now, I think you and I should have a private conversation, not on tape,
Okay.
where we plan a strategy
Okay.
to deal with what you have coming, okay? Because we don't want to tip our hand to them either. And I don't think you need a WMD to do what we need.
Okay.
Okay, is that cool?
Yeah.
Hey, no, you don't. So, okay, I'll tell you one more story.
Does it, I think it's using search?
Scott Kesterton, Barnes Evan. Scott says, can't you just use the apps to detect the machines? No, because they're not a hotspot.
Okay.
They're a cell tower. They call the cell tower. It's a cell phone. So you have to have an EMF sensor. That's different than a hotspot. Does this make sense? Okay. All right. Well, anyway. Okay, I was going to tell you a story. Yeah.
Well, that's just a quick aside. They were saying, oh yeah, that in Hughes County here, Corvallis systems are air gaps. But they have 2 scanners and a printer on their internal air gap network that are all Wi-Fi hotspots. I'm like, okay, I can still get into this network through those places.
And I just want to say,
Immediately ignored that.
he's right. And I have to it's a good chance for me to kind of bring back the conversation too. I spent all of 2021 doing exactly that. Meeting with secretaries of states, The story I was going to tell you is I met with the Secretary of State, Kyle Bertland. He was of Louisiana. He was also president of the National Secretaries of States Association. And I sat there for an entire Sunday, hacking into every one of his systems in his whole state. I could turn them on remotely. And it was like he watches the whole thing. And we had a whole plan where he was going to make a public announcement. He's president of the National Secretaries of States Association. And so for him to like decertify all the machines in Louisiana, it's going to be a big deal. The whole was going to send shockwaves across the country. The president of the National Secretaries of States Association is decertifying all of his machines because even though he has the most secure network in the country, it's totally hacked. That's what we were waiting for. Well, we had the day all set up when he was going to do the big press conference, and suddenly he disappeared. And nobody could find him for about 3 months. And then the election happened, and then he reemerged. And a bunch of citizens cornered him at a press conference and said, "Hey, we understand that right after the state GOP meeting, you met with Dr. Frank and hacked in all the machines, and you were going to announce that you were going to decertify all the machines. What happened to that?" And he denied the whole thing in front of television cameras. So we put together a whole set of affidavits. Person picked me up at the hotel and drove me to the private residence. People that brought us egg parmesan for lunch. The hostess of the we put together all these affidavits and presented it to him. Next day, he announced he's resigning.
Wow.
He's resigning. But what does it tell you? It tells you he got paid off or threatened or something. Okay, and so but the reason I tell that is a longer story, but I can tell you. I can spend the whole rest of our time together just telling you stories like that. And what I've learned is that doesn't fix the problem.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I told you a story from Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Come on, that's red Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And you guys being in Oregon, you think a certain way. You think, well, the reason it's all messed up here is because we're blue and we have Democrats in charge. Wrong. Okay, it's messed up everywhere. It's maybe even more messed up in a lot of the red states. And I just mentioned Oklahoma. And then I just mentioned Louisiana. You want me to mention Missouri? I was just there. All those states that we think of as red are not.
Red counties too.
Yes, and so that's where we're up against. So that's kind of a nice bridge. Maybe that brings me back in. But that was a good question. I don't mind. This is a small class. I'm a teacher. Ask me a question. All right. So anyway, when I was in that lawsuit, after I told you, I said 1 + 1 is 2, except in social science. I said, and the judge slammed the gavel, and then when Justin Grimmer finished testifying and they were cleaning up the Zoom call because he had showed up person, I leaned over to the microphone and said, all this talk about math being different in the social sciences reminds me of Abraham Lincoln's question. He said, how many legs does a dog have if you call his tail a leg?
Who wants to answer that question?
The answer is 4. Calling his tail a leg doesn't make it a leg. But it seems to,
Yeah.
and that's the difference between physics and hard science and political quote unquote science, is that hard numbers are real. So anyway, I said that, so I shut up. I didn't want the judge to put me in jail. So I just want to say in summary, I was staying in somewhere near Salem, and this robin, this is the same one, I think it's on, but there was this robin banging on the window all morning. You've seen that before? They see their reflection, they're attacking their reflection over and over and over again. And I stayed in that same cabin 2 nights in a row, and that same robin was there that next morning slamming against that. I mean, how long is it going to take before he figures out that that's not going to work, right? And then that's not real. But it's like, reminds me of Einstein. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That is the state of election integrity in our country. Is everybody, state to state, county to county, are doing the same stupid things over and over again and expecting them to work. And I met with Mark Fielman 2 years ago and talked to them about his lawsuit. They said, this is not going anywhere. And I don't object to lawsuits. I think they're a good thing because they educate the public. But if you're waiting for the outcome of a lawsuit to fix the problem, oh man, you're living in la la land, as it ain't gonna do it. And so because how many lawsuits have I been in so far? How many have we tried around the country? the judicial system's not going to fix this problem. So everybody's on some hamster wheels. Patriots really care about things. They're trying to fix the country. I get it. You got a lot of energy. They invest a lot of time and money, but they're not getting anywhere. Okay? Until a few counties I started having breakthroughs around the country. And so but that was, me being all smarty pants figuring it out. That was grassroots wisdom kind of accumulating to a critical point. And we learned what to do. And I'm going to teach you what that is. So I need to change the way you think. Today, I need to change the way you think because most people are doing the wrong things. And I need you to think about it differently. So that's what I'm here for. All right. If I don't do anything else, that's what I would like to do first. And why can I do that? Because I'm in all these states and counties and I've seen what's working and not working. And I quickly learned when I was doing this work that I had to do it in person. And Jesus didn't send me else. He went town to town, training small people, spreading the gospel. And it's the most successful movement in history. And I converged on this. In the beginning, I thought I could give big talks on TV and at the big rallies and do Zoom calls with everybody and get the word out quickly. And boy, was I wrong. Nothing happens when you take that approach, which is why I devoted every day. I do this. And I'm typically on the road 2 to 3 weeks at a time. I'm home for a couple of days. This is my third of 3 weeks. I can be home Saturday, I'll be home 3 days, and then I'm off for almost a month. It's crazy. But it's working. And people say, oh, thanks for fighting for our country, Dr. Frank. I'm really not fighting for our country. I'm really fighting for the country that made a covenant with God. That's the country I'm fighting for. And I think of it, I was never in the military, so I sort of think of this as my tour, and maybe I'm not under gunfire. Looking on Google, you might call that gunfire, 50 pages of hippies or something, but it's not the same. I think of this as my turn to serve. So it's like, if I was having a tour of duty, I'd be in some foxholes, freezing my butt off, or, sweating, but I can sit in hotels. And this is a pretty town. So I get to hang around neat places all the time. Anyway, they call me an election denier. NPR did this middle of 2022. They talked about Mike and me and Seth Cashman and Dave Clements. We were traveling around the country. We were the most prominent people out there. I've done about twice as many events like this as those guys. I think Dave sent me a text the other day. He says, Dr. Brent, keep on grinding. You keep on grinding. So I'm doing this every day. I'm with the new team, it seems like. But the reason I like it is because it shows that they're noticing what we're doing and it's having an effect. I'm not an election denier. In fact, I've been called the Johnny Appleseed election denier, which I really like that. I'm going town to town. Instead of planting seeds, though, I'm starting little bonfires, and then I come back and I throw gasoline on those bonfires. And that's exactly what's happening right now in Oregon. Okay, we got some bonfires finally going, and we're fanning those flames right now. So I'm back so quick. I was just in my trip to Polk, it's actually the second, because once we got that fire going, I came back and got into that. We are, and I need other states, other counties to join in. But, Johnny, I've seen election. When I got called that a couple of years ago, I hadn't thought of Johnny Appleseed since I was a boy, so I went and looked him up online. And I found this really cool video of Johnny Appleseed singing the Johnny Appleseed song. And it was cool. And he was saying, the Lord is good to me. And so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need, the sun and rain and an apple seed. Yet He's been good to me. Remember the song? Isn't that a great song?
Yeah.
And I was just tripping out. What a great song. I like this song. And then I looked, and my jaw fell open. It's a Disney movie.
Yes.
It's like, whoa. That was what Disney was. That's not what Disney is today. And it occurred to me that is what our country was. And that is not what our country is today. And who was on duty during that time? It was me, you, it was us, not my children. I have 3 children, 26, 24, 22. My oldest daughter, Nellie, she has Down syndrome. She just loves politicians, and she doesn't know better. And then My youngest boy, Daniel, he's studying for the ministry. He's 24 and he's married 2 years. And my youngest boy there, he's a church pianist. And he helps take care of Nellie when I'm on the road and Don is at work. By the way, that's how I can afford to do this. People say, how do you afford to do this? You're not charging. I say, yeah, we just pass the hat, people chip in. I said, I don't have a house payment, don't have a car payment. My wife works it, so I can afford to do this. So, that's how it works. Anyway, the important thing about this is to realize that was our country. And you're old enough, most of you here, to remember that was our country, and we are not that country anymore. We have lost our country. And people always say, we got to protect it. No, we've already lost it. I like what Pastor Brian said the other day. I was listening to the sermons. He said, everybody talks, we need to have a revival. He said, no, a revival implies you're going to bring back something old. No, we need something new. And we're having a spiritual awakening, which I'm really anxious to see progress, and it is progressing. I'm excited to be part of that. But anyway, the Los Angeles Times picked up on this, and they called me to Johnny Appleseed Election Fraud. They didn't quite right. This is the middle of last year. At that point, I'd given more than 50 speeches. Can you imagine? They looked up all these flyers. They made these really cool graphics. It was a 4-page article in the LA Times.
Wow.
And they wrote this whole thing, and I had a long interview, and they interviewed several people across the state. And they did a follow-up piece the following week and said, meet the man trying to upend voting starting in California. And when I first started going to California, people said, don't waste your time out there, Dr. Frank. That place is Marxist. That place is communist. We need you in Georgia. We need you in Michigan. We need you in Maricopa. We need you in these swing places to fix our elections. But they weren't inviting me. California invited me. I went out there, and what did I find? A state, Marxist state under communism. It's a horrible place. It's in terrible shape there. But because of that, the pain level is high. And in every county I go to, in most cities, there's a patriot group that's alive.
Yeah.
Okay, and so once the pain level comes up, people wake up. And so they're more awake than almost anywhere else in the country because they're under all this pain. And so all I have to do is come in and show these little teams what to do. And we're cleaning up. We're making more progress in election integrity in California than anywhere else in the country. So I like General Flynn says, he says the pain level has to get to a certain point. And as long as you're comfortable, you're not going to do anything. So my number one job is to wake you up. I think you're not too far behind California, so maybe that's why you're starting to come alive now.
Actually, there's no tampon. I was in the boys' bathroom down there. I get phone calls. I lived in California.
Yeah.
I'm getting phone calls from California to Oregon when that passed.
Yes.
What in the world? I'm like,
yes.
I don't know how to explain it.
Yes. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
But because of that, for example, Shasta County, which is 75,000 voters, twice your size, has in January, a year and a half ago, voted out their voting machines. And then 2 months later, they voted out their electronic poll books. And a month later, they voted to have all hand counting and all paper ballots. Okay, that's Shasta County. And what's that? Is that where you're from? Yeah. I always joke about Shasta County because I was conceived there. My parents lived there. I grew up in Northern California. So anyway, Shasta County, and then just if you look at the news, look up Huntington Beach. About 2 months ago, they announced that they were going to run all their elections, all their municipal elections, locally, and we're not going to use the state systems. They added 120 precincts, and they were going to require signature and photo ID, and that's 400,000 voters in that city. And so, and then I could go on and on about California. I could talk about San Joaquin. I could talk about Fresno. Anyway, there's this good stuff happening there. I can talk about the 5 sheriffs that have formed a coalition there that are doing a statewide investigation and working on filing an injunction against use of the machines in the elections because they have the hard evidence. Okay, in California. Okay, wow. And this is why I'm saying I've done over 90 talks there now, and it's basically my MO, right? Once you got something on fire, man, I'm back there as fast as I can to keep the fires burning. And so that's why I'm back here so quickly again here, because there's a fire going here, and I want those flames hot. So that's why I'm here. All right. You already heard about my credentials. I'll move on. Oh, it didn't mention I'm a terrorist. Okay. I need to tell you this story because in this one story, I can teach you so much about elections that it saves me a lot of slides, and it'll be a very efficient way to teach you. So how did I even get into this mess in the first place? Well, if you remember, in December, actually at the end of November of 2020, Doug Mastriano from Pennsylvania, he's a senator there, he held a special press conference, and he said, we're going to do an in-depth look at our elections in Pennsylvania. This is a state that's a red state. Majority of the legislature are Republicans. And so, long story short, Kathy Barnett, who's from Montgomery County, called me up. She and I become friends during COVID. She said, would you please look at my election? Something's wrong with my election. So she sent me the data. I studied her data. Boy, did I have a lot of questions. So she introduced me to two legislators who were leading the investigation in Pennsylvania. I showed them my results. They were impressed. They put me on the team. So I was on a team of 6 people, had full access to anything I wanted in the state of Pennsylvania. This is the only full forensic audit we've had in the country. The Maricopa one, we were denied all the critical things we needed, including the control of what's going on. Here, I was working with the guys doing the audit. It's awesome. Well, when I joined the team, there was already a gal, her name's Heather Honey, who was going county by county and adding, just doing a simple reconciliation. She'd say, okay, how many people voted here? How many people voted here? How many people voted here? So she just added up how many people voted in every county. And she went back and said, how many ballots did we count here? How many ballots did we count? She said, how many people voted? How many ballots did we count? We discovered that the state of Pennsylvania had 765,000 more ballots than they had voters. They counted 765,000 more ballots than people who voted. I can say that right the first time. I said it right the second time. Than people who voted. So
my
that.
brother died and he voted.
What's that?
My brother died and he voted in that time.
In this county or in Pennsylvania? So
Wow.
before you leave today, let's get that evidence, okay? Because that's exactly what we need in our present and what we're doing. So what happened was, oh yeah, so you had 765,000. Now, when I first say that, people are always like, that sounds outlandish. That sounds ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous to me too. But then you might remember they arrested that United States Postal Service contractor driving 200,000 completed ballots from New York to Pennsylvania. Do you remember that? That's 200,000 ballots more than 200,000 voters right there. So I've already got you a third of the way, haven't I? And that doesn't quite sound so outlandish. That was publicly exposed. That's just the one they caught. Okay, you see where I'm going? Let me talk about Montgomery County. This is the second story. Once you hear these 2 stories, you're going to understand what's going on, I think. So in Montgomery County, I was given access to all the records for all time. And I was studying them. I could spend a whole day talking. But what I found is right before the election, 6 weeks before the election in 2020, 50,000 people suddenly got added to the rolls in a county with only 500,000. So that was about a 10% surge all at once in one afternoon.
Wow.
And that was interesting. I noticed that. But I just figured, well, maybe the clerk let them build up and inserted them all in one day or something like that. But still, I noticed. Then on election day, all 50,000 of them voted. And I said, well, you know, in science, you try to be driven to a conclusion. You try to make excuses. So I said, well, maybe, you know, all the new registrants would vote. So, okay, that kind of makes sense. But then what surprised me is by the end of December, all 50,000 of them had been removed from the rolls.
Oh.
So 50,000 people were added, they all voted, and they were all removed within 2 months. That was confusing to me. I didn't understand. So I asked the Secretary of State, he had subpoena authority through the legislature. I asked the Secretary of State, why are you removing those people from the voter rolls? And she answered that very afternoon. She said, because they moved away. That was another surprise. I didn't understand that. But I have all that information. I know every voter, I know their address, I know their voting history, I know their birthdays, I know all these things about these voters. So I went back and started looking them up, these 50,000. And she was right. They had all moved away 10 years earlier.
Oh.
So understand what happened. Somebody took old copies of the rolls or inactive voters, reactivated them, knowing that they're not real voters, stuffed 50,000 ballots for those non-real voters, And then after the election, the state system that cleans off people that have moved away was just naturally cleaning them off. So all you have to do is just stick in a bunch of former voters, stuff ballots for them, and the state cleans up on that side. That was a shock to me. So then the question is, well, who did that? Don't you want to know?
Yeah.
So did I. So did the team. I was part of a team of 6 people. One of them said, we're getting a copy of the logs. So they got a copy of the logs, the state logs, for 2 months. And boy, is that a huge file. We got 6 volunteers, cyber experts, to go scraping through the logs to find my 50,000. And they finally found it. And when you're doing cybercrime, you don't know who is on the other side of the keyboard. You just know user ID, credentials. Sometimes you know IP address. Well, it turns out that the user ID and password corresponded to the Hillary Clinton campaign. And that was another surprise to me. So I called up Russ Simon and I said, I don't understand, Russ. Why does the Hillary Clinton campaign have access to your voter rolls? This is 2020. Isn't that back in 2016? What's this all about? And he said, oh, I know what that is. And he mailed me a newspaper clipping. And the newspaper clipping talked about the state of Pennsylvania hired the Hillary Clinton campaign to write an app in 2015 that enabled people to register voters at football games, college campuses, and rock concerts. And that app development credentials were still active, which basically gave anybody with those credentials back-end access to the database. They could add and remove, change any field they wanted anytime. So then the guy's on, and you know what that means. And so he's a programmer too. And so then it's like, well, wait a minute. If she had access, who else does? And so we did a statewide scouring of about 2 months of those logs. That same team went back in. We discovered 32 non-government organizations had access to the rolls. They were stuffing ballots. They were stuffing voters and then stuffing ballots. That's how you get up to 765. It's starting to make sense now. It doesn't sound quite so outlandish. The number 1 manipulator in the state was Hillary Clinton campaign. The number 2 was CTCL, the Center for Tech and Civic Life, the Zuckerbucks. Okay, the 3rd one was Rock the Vote, and the 4th most common one across the state was Antifa. I couldn't believe it, Antifa. And then the list went on, and I don't remember the exact order after that, but I remember seeing the League of Women Voters and Catholic Relief Services and Lutheran Relief Community Services or something. And it's like all these NGOs. And if you want an eye opener, get a copy of your budget from your own county and find out how much money you're giving to these local places and read the contracts you make with them. And they'll say in their contract, you know, we are concerned about the minority community in our county, and they're disenfranchised. So, you know, if you give us this grant, we'll go out and get them registered to vote, and then we'll make sure that we order and get their ballots to them. We'll make sure that they vote. We'll re-enfranchise these people that have been disenfranchised from society. What's really going on is they're just selling ballots. And they're getting paid to do it. Okay, and that's kind of the lead in the system.
Treason?
What's that?
Treason.
That is treason. Yes, it is. This is a capital offense. People always say to me, "How come we don't have any convictions?" We do. They just don't know about them. They just don't know about them. But there's like, we want to get these people in front of a trial. I agree. Think of it like World War II. You can't have the trials during the war. Because the people you need to prosecute, there's too many of them in the wrong and powerful places. So you have to win the war, then you can have the Nuremberg trials, and then I'm all for public hangings. And we got a long list of people who we need to have capital offense. This is hard to do now because you're in the middle of a war. You have to think of this like a war. It is a war. It's a spiritual war and a political war at the same time. All right. So anyway, okay, that's the first part of the story. See how much I'm just talking about elections? It's a really powerful story. But now I want to move to politics a little bit because think about it. I've got all this evidence. Our team had all this evidence. Dude, the election was certified illegally in that state. They know it. We bring all this evidence to the legislators. What am I expecting? Naive, rude Dr. Frank walks in there and says, here's all the evidence you need to decertify the election. And I was actually expecting them to. After all, they're a majority Republican. That just shows how naive I was, because Republicans are good and Democrats are bad, right? Okay, so, but they didn't. They hid it. They covered it up, and this is how they covered it up. They said, "Oh no, our voter rolls are dirty." Yeah, we're training our voter rolls. They threw out their voter rolls. They said, "We're going to hire a firm to rebuild our voter rolls," and they did. On December 20th, they awarded a contract to a Pennsylvania company, $10 million to rebuild their voter rolls in time for the spring election. 3 days later, that firm was bought by CTCL, and that was like ding, 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 ding. That was my red pill moment. That's when I realized they're covering the whole thing up. They just put the box right back in house, and boy, was I! I felt I just given up, sleep day and night for 3 weeks of my life trying to save the country, and that made me upset. So I didn't talk to him for about a week. I flew down. I didn't fly down. I downloaded all the data from Florida, downloaded all the data from North Carolina, downloaded the data from Ohio, anywhere I could get red states. Because while I was working in Pennsylvania, I had developed all these mathematical algorithms. That's what that movie made about. And I wanted to try them out in other states because they worked so well in Pennsylvania for finding the fraud. I said, I'm going to try them out here. Well, I found as much fraud in Florida as there was in California.
Wow.
I called the Secretary of State. I flew down there, met the Secretary of State. I didn't meet in person with the Senate team, but I Zoom with him. I flew down to Mar-a-Lago, met Trump's team, showed him. I thought Florida is Republican. Yoo-hoo! They'll fix the problem. Boy, was I wrong. Okay, they covered it up too. Everywhere I went, the Republicans were covering it up. That was an eye-opener to me. I did not expect that. And especially in this state, since you guys have Democrat tyranny going on, you probably just think Democrats are bad and Republicans are good. But now you're learning. And before I was having a discussion, I said the Republican Party's having a civil war right now. Yes, because it's a serious problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you notice that I just brought you through the process here, right? Yeah. If you think you're going to fix it in the courts, I think I've already. That's not going to work out. If you're going to try to fix it in the legislature, fat chance it's not going to happen. And so what's left? The real government, us. That's what's left, and that's what I had to learn. Anyways, after Supreme Court rejected those cases from Montgomery County, Kathy Burnett introduced me to Mike. He made a movie about me. I'll cite the proof. It's an hour long. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty fun. Watching Mike get all excited is pretty fun. It's 3.5 hours long, and it's the first time you'd ever seen my work. And I would explain an idea, and you go, oh, that, and you go off on a rant. It's 3.5 hours. Explain something to the brand, and explain something to this brand. He's a lovely man, lovely dad. But I'm a good teacher, and I'd like rope him back in, and he would get on, and he'd say, listen to me, people, listen to me, people. He was very excited. It's all that 3.5 hours reduced down to 1 hour. It's pretty fun to watch. But I was so tired at the end. I was showing him some graphs from Ohio, and I said, you see how this red curve and this black curve are very similar? I said, I was tired of giving technical explanations. So I said, you know what? That ain't natural, buddy. And I went on to the next slide. But I got to tell you, that has turned out to be a very important phrase. It just came off the cuff, but people all around the country relate to this in a very important way. Because you were watching the election on election night, weren't you? And you were going, huh? Everybody's head all did the same thing. Something's wrong with this. There's something wrong. It's not natural. And that is really true. And that's what the statistics show. Basically, in that movie, I proved beyond a shadow of a doubt, there's a statistical impossibility that our elections have. They have to be manipulated to have the results that I've seen. And I can go into that. And for the first year, that's what I was doing. I was going around the country teaching everybody how to do math, thinking I could save the country with math. And I was yet still green. It's not being very smart about it. But I figured it out. Now, Mike went through a process too. He was thinking he's got all this wonderful data. He's got all this electronic evidence showing your machines online during the election.
Okay.
This Absolute Interference is an awesome movie. It's about 2 hours long. Mike was assuming, like I was, if we show people the evidence, that everybody will go, oh my goodness, our elections are corrupt. We got to deal with this. We were wrong. You don't win with evidence. He was convinced once we get the evidence before the Supreme Court, it'll be absolutely 9-0. And remember, he was saying, gee, once the Supreme Court sees this, it's going to be absolutely nuts. They're going to Trump back in office back in August. He was going around the country saying that just shows how naive we were. Okay, because we thought evidence wins the day, and we're wrong. And that's why WMDs don't win the day.
Okay.
Evidence is what you need. We can give you plenty of evidence already. You don't need the WMDs to give you evidence.
Okay.
Okay, but it's a long story. All right, so I like what Patrick Byrne said. I talked to him about a couple months ago. He says, quote, Dr. Frank reverse engineered the algorithms that are used to cheat our elections. And that's exactly what I did. I used the scientific method and statistic and mathematical tools and reversed it to the point where I could predict everything in every state. And that can't be real. Can't be real. I mean, I can tell you how many 18-year-olds voted in your county. I can tell you how many 53-year-olds vote in your county. It's crazy. The math, it's very straightforward math, but I reverse engineered all that. And he says, then I like this, he says there are about a dozen tools in their cheating toolbox, and they use whichever combination of tools works best in each situation. So I'll hear people say, oh, Dr. Frank, we're going to get all paper ballots in our state, that'll fix it. You already have paper ballots in your state. Do you know other states don't even know that? In Georgia, for 20 years, they never voted on paper. They touch a screen. There's no paper anywhere. And I go to certain states and I'll say, Dr. Frank, we got a big legislative movement. We're trying to get paper ballots to secure our elections. I ain't gonna fix it, okay? Other states have paper ballots. Most actually have paper ballots. So anyway, you get the point. So if you fix that, I always make the joke, I think that yes. It's like you go to the doctor and he says you have a dozen tumors, okay? And he says, we're gonna take these 4 out. Well, you're dead. You still have 8 tumors. You have to get rid of all the tumors or you don't, or you're dead. Yes, that's the point. In our elections, all the legislation I see from people who are trying to look like they're doing election reform, there are 12 tumors and they might be, scraping a little bit at one of them. And that's not going to fix the problem, but tries to make them look good and they care about election affairs. So that's the situation we're in. All right, I'm trying to I need to move a little faster. So I can not keep going. Anyway, the President Trump asked me to be his keynote speaker for his first rally after being out of office. It was in Wellington, Ohio. And he said, Dr. Frank, explain to the country, explain to the world how my election was stolen. It's a great, great task. I was so honored to do that for him. So I remember walking up to the podium. I worked all week, day and night to make it. I mean, the whole world's going to see this is going to be an important presentation, right? And I walked up to the microphone and there's a sea of 21,000 people. And they'd all been standing in the hot sun in Northern Ohio for 6 hours, listening to rock and roll, drinking beer at a Trump rally. Have you been to a Trump rally? You know what that's like? It's very rowdy. And I remember walking up to the microphone and thinking, I just wasted a whole week of my life because I'm going to try to teach these people math. But I got to tell you, I was about halfway through my talk, and you could hear a pin drop. It was silent. I was just in Michigan recently, and somebody in the audience at this point, they kind of blurted out, Dr. Frank, I was there. It was eerily quiet. And it was like totally silent. I had these people hanging on my every word. It was awesome. It was like the best math class of my life. I would show a graph, and you could just hear. Oh, I mean, they were totally getting it. It was awesome. And the next day they made memes about me. That's good and that's bad. It's good because they understood, but it's bad because it fueled me forward. I'm saving the country with math. And I was going around the country teaching everybody math and teaching how this couldn't be real. And I thought the evidence would carry the day. And I was wrong. You don't win with evidence. And I was getting hit pieces made on me everywhere I went. New Yorker, I liked it. Seeing yourself in cartoons kind of fun. But this is what they interpreted all my math, right? That's the problem. When I show my math to somebody who's like a math guy, it's like 5 minutes. They're like, I'm done. This is not real. Everybody gets it. Anybody who works with data knows. They're like, whoa, this is not real. What's that? Yeah, they really don't like you. Oh no, I'm very hated. Yeah, that's how you know I'm the real deal. Just look me up on Google. There'll be like 50 pages on Google. And he says, yeah. And that's no, that's magic honor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Only thing is I gotta do it on more work.
After you do?
That's how I confirm this reputation when I put it on the position.
Yes, that's fine. Well, anyway, I just want you, I was going around the country teaching that. I'll show you that. I was Mike's MC for the Cyber Symposium in 20, and that was where basically Mike was showing the world he had the evidence, all the electronic evidence. And the following year, you can see his growth as well as my growth, where we were focusing on the equipment, not the evidence anymore. We were saying we got to attack the equipment and the trial of the machines. That was and then just this last year at the Election Crime Bureau Summit, you can see his final step. This is to teach the grassroots and equip the grassroots how to do this. And that's where we were. And he gave me a whole hour to present my 7 steps and everything. So you can see his growth, you can see my growth, migrating away from the evidence towards the grassroots. Because really it's an awakening maybe and a revival of our hearts, and we need to turn our eyes toward heaven as well. So anyway, but at that event, if you haven't seen that stuff, it's all free. It's on Frank Speech, frankspeech.com or franksocial.com. I try to post there every day if I can. But look it up. But at the event, he announced he was broke. And I knew that when I first met him in March of 2021. He told me I have $35 million in the bank, liquid, he said, and I'm going to spend it all on election integrity. But of course, at that point, he was thinking that he was going to have Trump back in office by August. Yeah. He's since spent all that and more. He's like borrowing. He's $10 million in the hole personally, just buying this stuff. So he's fighting a good fight. Anyway, he announced in public. So then I said, well, how can I help you then? Because I'm always on the road about it. Mike, he said, tell everybody to go to my pillow and buy stuff or donate to the Linda Watkins Fund. And he says, tell everybody to use their Dr. Frank promo code. And I said, Mike, I don't have a Dr. Frank promo code. I'm not doing this for money. He says, well, you got one now. And so he gave me a Dr. Frank promo code. So I called corporate and I set it up. So if you use this code, the money, the 25% commission goes straight to the Linda Watkins Fund. Do you have a promo code, Mike?
Yeah.
So you know it's 25%. It's good commission.
Yes.
So I hate to say this, Scott's a good guy, so maybe use the promo code a little bit. But if you're trying to help Mike, use my promo code because he gets it all back. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that he gets more of the money. But my favorite, I have an ulterior motive because he doesn't own a computer. Mike Lindell doesn't own a computer. He runs his business from his cell phone, and so he uses his promo codes to track. So what happens is I pop up on his cell phone all the time. He's like, oh, Dr. Frank, you're in Alaska today. And he sends me messages. He goes, man, you're everywhere. So it's sort of a nice way it's a game between me and Mike. So if one of you buys a pillow, use that. And then somebody else buys slippers and use Scott's. What's your Bards? Bards, yeah. Is it Bards FM or Bards Spark? BRDS. BARDS. So, let's give him a little tease with that. All right. You can get signed up at at Frank Social. Mike's trying to equip the grassroots through that. He's also trying to get everybody to sign a petition. So you'll see that there if you go there. So please buy his pillows, help him out. And he's the real deal. This is how you know he's the real deal. You have to wait for that second wave of laughter, and I know everybody has it. If that doesn't convince you he's the real deal, this okay. So I think I set the context pretty good in history. I think I taught you a lot about elections along the way, but I hopefully brought you through a process. In my introduction, I mentioned I've met with dozens of Secretary of States and AGs and testified all over the country. Doesn't work top down, guys. I've had better access than I think anybody in the country. Doesn't work from top down. It has to be from the bottom. So I think I've done. Let me tell you what the problem is. In general, and I'll give you a couple of examples. And here's the problem. In every state in America, every state, elections are now centrally controlled by the state. So you have a person about to be a clerk in a county, and what she's going to learn, she's not in control of the election. She's just writing the software that the state provides. using the machines that the state provides instead of actually managing your own election. It's centrally controlled state by state, which is why I can predict it. It was essentially controlled. I wouldn't be able to predict it. And it's a long discussion. I could give you a whole hour lecture. Just take my word for it, Brown. Just do what I tell you. All right. But let me give you a couple of examples. So here's Wisconsin. I had a private meeting with Speaker Boss, Speaker of the House. And this was in 2021 late. Actually, it was 22. And citizens set it up. It was me, Sean Smith, and John Eastman. I was there to summarize all the fraud we found so far in the state. Sean was there to show how hackable the system worked. You know, Sean is a retired colonel from the Air Force. He was in charge of operational testing and cybersecurity for the Air Force and Space Force. He retired from the Pentagon in 2018. There's nobody in the country, as far as I'm concerned, more talented and more knowledgeable about our election machines than Sean Smith. He knows it down to the chip level, because that's what he did when he was in the military. He studied everything down to the chip level. Brilliant. So, and then John Eastman is a constitutional scholar, and he was Trump's constitution guy. And so the way the meeting was supposed to go was Sean was supposed to show Speaker Boss how hackable the machines were. I was going to summarize all the fraud we found. And then John Eastman was going to say, now that you know that your elections aren't secure and you have all this fraud, here's what you get to do because you're the Speaker of the House and here's your authority. So we were there to give him a training session as well. Well, what happened is about halfway through mine, he interrupted me. And this is super important you learn this idea, which is why I'm telling you this story. I was about halfway through. He said, Dr. Frank, I just don't believe we have as much fraud as you say. I think, what can you say? I mean, just summarize about 350,000 cases of fraud. He says, I just don't believe it. He says, because we've done recounts in our 3 largest counties in Wisconsin, and all the recounts came out right. So I said, sir, it doesn't matter how many times you count the cash in the register.
Yeah.
What matters is, are they the real bills or are they counterfeit? You know, it doesn't matter how many times you count the cash in the register. What matters is, are they real or counterfeit? Right? Think about those 200,000 ballots I told you about in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Doesn't matter. They're not doing some real voters. You can count them by hand. You can count them on machines. You can count them standing on the air. Doesn't matter. You can count them in public with everybody watching. The problem is about the real ballots from the real voters. And everybody has been so focused on the machines, I understand it, but it's like a shiny object. That's not where the audit needs to be. The audit needs to be on who voted. Are they the real voters? And you guys did some door knocking already in Coos.
Yep.
And I guess they reminded me, I forgot, that I gave you a list of a bunch of doors to knock on. And you found out of 17 doors, you found 7 residences had people who voted there who were not there.
Yep.
They were not real voters. And that auditing the voters is what we need to be doing. And think about this. If you suspect the machines are the problem, what access do you have to prove it? You don't have access. You have to go to court, and maybe in 6 months you might get a judge to order the machines open, like we did in Antwerp. Even then, nothing happens. So you don't win anything that way. Because then you can say, okay, well, the machines have modems in it, and just take a picture of it. But now the judge can say, or someone can say, well, okay, they can go online, but where's the harm? Show me the fraud. Just because they can't go online doesn't mean there was any fraud, right? So you're in this loop when you're chasing hard after something that doesn't deliver. What actually delivers is when you show the harm. This person is dead, and they voted. This person doesn't live here. They live in Colorado. We have a copy of their voting history. They've been voting there for 10 years, and they're voting in every election here. Yes.
So
You see where I'm going with this? This is real fraud.
I have a forensic background, and I actually know somebody out of Eugene that's a forensic question document examiner. And actually, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but Rudy Giuliani actually called him up to do some investigating on the actual ballots in certain states.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm supposed to say what states, but can I use him as an analysis of the ballots, like when I get into office, or I mean, is that kind of an option using?
You could, but I'm not very optimistic about it.
Okay.
What did we do in Maricopa? What are we doing about
Right,
six counties in Pennsylvania? We had access to the ballots. We've had access to the ballots in many states. It's not gonna solve your problem. How do you know that ballot that's been hand marked is from, remember, all the ballots are anonymous, don't see how the envelopes. How do you even know?
Well, in Oregon, there's barcodes. So did you
Oh,
know that?
This is a definitely an Oregon issue. Did you guys know your ballots are not anonymous?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. They use barcodes, right?
Well, no, it's worse than that.
There's a QR code.
There's a QR code and that's unique for every voter. And if you have the key, you know how every voter voted. We exposed that in the civil case. So
Oh.
even though I don't like lawsuits necessarily, guess what? We exposed that your ballots are not anonymous. And if you have the key, who has the key? Secretary of State, county clerk, and the printers.
And the county clerk has to have them because they check signatures. And they check your driver's license signature to the signature on the envelope.
I'm talking ballot.
Right. Oh.
Oh, she says. It just dawned on her.
Okay.
Yeah. You've got invalid voters. They have social security, which means you have filtering going on with social security benefits. And that level of fraud is way beyond.
Yes.
So if you clean up voter rolls, you're killing somebody's kickback out of the social security revenue.
Yes.
Because it's fake bodies that they're paying and it's going back to somebody.
Yes. So he's saying if you clean the voter rolls, you can clean up a lot of other fraud too. And a lot of people, like when I give them copies of the voter rolls, your voter rolls, Coos, are just filthy dirty. I've been looking at them all day. Maybe 1 in 3 out of the voters that are in there don't belong.
Oh, my goodness.
It's crazy, okay? And so when I show that to people, their first instinct is kind of what Scott just said. They're like, man, we got to clean these voter rolls. And I don't disagree. And a lot of people have that feeling, except that's like cleaning your kid's room.
Yeah.
You spend all day cleaning your kid's room, you let them back in 1 minute later, it's a disaster zone. The problem isn't that the rolls are dirty. That's the problem. But the problem isn't that they're dirty. The problem is that they're not under your control. So if you need to get control of them first, then clean them. If you clean them now, they're dirty in a week. And I can show you all around the country. And just last year in Los Angeles, Judicial Watch sued them, and EIPCA, Election Integrity Project of California, sued Los Angeles County. They had to remove a minimum of 1.2 million people from their voter rolls out of 5.3 million. And that was a conservative number based upon minimum federal standards. They had to remove 1.2 million. Within 2 months, they were completely full again with new non-real voters. So there's a lot of people out there trying to clean voter rolls. And I tell them, don't waste your time because I can make them dirty with a mouse click. You need to work on getting control of your voter rolls. Once you have control of your voter rolls, then clean your voter rolls. Until then, what happened on election night in 2020? Remember when the election stopped?
Yeah.
When they turned it back on, did you notice that Michigan had 156,000 new voters all of a sudden? And Wisconsin had 120,000 new voters all of a sudden. That's because they turned the election off, added the voters, and then when they turned the election back on, they all voted. Okay? That's what happens. So the problem isn't that that the rolls are dirty. The problem is you're not in control. Think about my Pennsylvania example. They made them dirty. They added 50,000 right before the election, just in Montgomery County alone. See how that works? Because every ballot that comes in has to be assigned to the name. So they have to fill the rolls with names that are not real, and they stuff out.
As the chair of the Constitution Party, I can ask and they will give me the whole voter roll, but not during the period right before the election.
Isn't that interesting?
Oh, you mean you have the whole 2 weeks? Yeah, they do.
Yes,
What?
and
Yeah.
yes, Scott.
you asked?
So.
Hopefully I didn't offend you with that.
But the law says.
Yeah,
up to 2 weeks before the election.
Yeah, but
I can't-
I'm about to guess.
pass it on to everybody.
He's pointing out that as he's head of the Constitution Party, he's entitled to a copy of the voter rolls, but they won't give him a copy of the voter rolls 2 weeks before the election. And that's not uncommon. And if you had been access to the Michigan ones, you would have seen the 156,000 suddenly add, but you don't get to see that. Scott.
I think we had a telegram on how bad this was, but we're trying to get it. That was from census report for the blocks.
Yes.
Because what they were doing is trying to hide how bad the corruption was throughout the system and through voter.
Yes.
Had that been cleaned up, most of what happened in 2020 was
Yeah, yes and no, because they added it anyway. I mean, if you have access to a computer, that's the problem with electronic systems. I can log into your system tonight and double the number of people in your voter rolls, okay? It's not that the rolls are dirty, it's that they're accessible.
It's not the dirtyable.
They're dirtyable.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've noticed, people that have vacation homes,
Yeah.
how do you, I mean, they might have a place in California and a place in Oregon.
Yes.
So how do you clean that up? You have to go off your taxes of where your main residence is. We've got college students that are
Yeah.
flip-flopping or coming in from out of state
Yeah.
into our, how do we stop that when they're getting 2 or 3 ballots sent to their, how do we stop that?
Something tells me you had a clerk that had control of the rolls, she would be stopping. The problem, and I'm going to show you some data here in a minute, that the local clerks are doing their jobs diligently. People die, they take them out. People move, they take them out. But the state is putting them back in, especially the ERIC states.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. The clerk is not in control of the rolls. Somebody else is in control, and that's through the state system. So in your example, you're right on target. That's one of the main cases of fraud we find, that somebody doesn't live here anymore. They've moved to California, and now the ballots are still going to their house, and somebody's casting those ballots or harvesting those ballots and casting them. So the way we catch that, the way I teach people to do is I send you to the residence, you find out that person isn't living there, but they're voting from there. We use the National Change of Address Registry, NCOA, provided by the post office. We find out where they moved to. And we look them up where they are there. We get a copy of their voting roll there. And once you have them vote for both places, that's fraud. And we have teams in every county in the country, or every state at least. We'll send somebody to knock on the door. You knock on the door and get the witness, the testimony from that guy saying, yeah, I left Oregon, 5 years ago when I've been voting here. And so you get him to sign that, now you got a case of fraud. And what you're doing is you're exposing that the system you're using is enabling fraud. And every one of those cases of fraud, I want you to think about that while I'm on this topic. You work hard. You work on somebody's campaign. You pound doors. You donate money to campaigns. You study the election carefully. You make careful decisions about who you're going to vote for and how you're going to vote. And somebody else just stole that from you. Okay? You were disenfranchised from your constitutional rights. Every one of those fraudulent ballots is disenfranchising you from your constitutional rights. That is our level as people, and I'm going to explain that. So anyway, you get the story from Wisconsin, and it's a national story. And what I did is I testified before the legislature in December of 2021. I downloaded their data month by month from 2009 to 2022, and I showed them that month by month for the 3 largest counties, right before the 2012 election, for example, their voter rolls suddenly surged. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
People voted, they took them out. Right? Same in the midterm, same thing. And then for the 2016 election between Trump and Hillary, same thing. And then afterwards, they removed 25% of the people from the roll.
Wow.
25% of the people.
One day.
Yeah. And especially all the new people were resurrected or moved in, and within 4 years. And I said to Speaker Boss, I said, how do you explain this? How do you explain this? And he said, oh, those 3 counties have a lot of turnover. And I said, well, what about all of your counties? Okay, this is every county. This is 3 days of work for me to do this. I get county by county, month by month, downloading voter rolls. I mean, that's a lot of work, and I'm good at this stuff, right? This is why nobody's ever seen anything like this, because it's so much work. Clerks don't have access to this kind of stuff. They don't even know this is going on. This was important for me because it was a breakthrough. Because at that point, this made it on the cover of the newspaper all over Wisconsin, because they were being told, we can't have widespread fraud because each county runs its own election. Does this look to you like each county is running its own election? We could have a long statistical argument, but you know what's better? That ain't natural. Okay? That ain't natural.
That's algorithms, right? Like that's.
You better believe that's Auger driving that. It couldn't be the same. We look at the shape. I mean, it's just preposterous. Preposterous. That can't be natural. You can see little wiggles here and there, and that's probably the local clerk doing her job. But the massive amount of what's going on is centrally controlled. It's not controlled at the local level. All right. Now, I'm going to show you one more example because I need to make the point now and get to the solutions. I need to show you your own data first, then I'll show you the solutions. So Wyoming is the most conservative state in the country. It's red as red can get in our country. 8 out of 9 people are registered Republican there, and they voted 3-1 for Trump, more than any other state in the country. So they're the reddest of the red. So I don't want you to think, well, you showed us Wisconsin. Of course, Wisconsin is bad. What about conservative red states? You know where I'm going, don't you?
Yeah.
Here are their 3 largest counties, month by month over from 2008 to 2000. Okay? All right? And when I showed this to the clerks in their state, they didn't even know this was happening to them either. And they were all dumbfounded because they didn't even know it. They just look at the total numbers of the elections, and that doesn't change much. And this is all the rest of the counties. And if I put it all on the same scale so you can zoom in on it, you can see some variations. But on average, it's going up and down 20 to 25% every 2 years. That's twice the rate of Wisconsin. It's crazy. They didn't even know that was happening. So that, I think I've shown you their centrally control. Yes. And I'm going to show you some more of your state here in a minute. But this, people say, well, can we fix it legislatively, Dr. Frank? This slide is one slide proof. No, we can't fix it legislatively. This is their legislative session last year, 2023, in Wyoming. And they have this scale here. This is most liberal, this is most conservative. They've got this one super conservative legislator. I call him the King James Republican. He's the one that sticks to absolute truth. He's a good guy. And then they have 26 Republicans. They call themselves the Freedom Caucus. They vote pretty consistently with the most conservative guys. Got a conservative guy, Freedom Caucus, all Republicans. And then they have 26 Republicans who vote along with the 6 most liberal Democrats from the 6 big cities. So every vote is 26 against 26 plus 6. Okay, are they going to be able to enact an election with more in that state? No. And this is a shock to people because they say, wait a minute, 8 out of 9 people are Republican. How could the legislature look this way? Because these guys pretend to be Republicans during the campaigns. They get elected and then they act like the Democrats afterwards, or they act like socialists or communists or whatever. So this is the most conservative legislature in the country. They have a guy named Chuck Reddy, new Secretary of State there, who's my favorite Secretary of State in the country. He's a real good guy. He's a real warrior. He's fighting for election integrity, but he's up against this state. That's what he's up against. All right, I think I've made that point. Oh, I need to show you one more example because it's more like their state. So here's Kentucky. This is since 2017. This is the number of voting age people they have in their state. And this is the number of people in the voting rolls that they have in their state from 2017 to 23. And there's a little divot, I'll talk about that. But you notice that they went right past their own population. There are 8 states like that, where they have more people in the voter rolls than they have population of voting age people. 8 states are like that.
And Oregon is one, right?
And Oregon is one, yes. And that's why Judicial Watch has put you on notice, because they're coming to sue you. They've been winning those lawsuits all over the country because you're not. Same thing. You have it's obvious when you have more people in your voter rolls than you have people. It can't be right. Anyway,
Judicial Watch contacted me.
Oh.
Yeah. They said they would agree to.
Yes. Yes, and what I've noticed about those lawsuits is I really reference them all the time. They're good for publication. They for the public information, because what happens is people then get to know, yep, it's proven in court our voter rolls are dirty. But I'm telling you, nothing happens.
Yep.
They win everywhere, but nothing happens because what do you then do? Okay, we clean the voter rolls, but they're not in control of the voter rolls, so they get dirty right again. Okay, and the problem is you're not in control of the voter rolls locally. That's what you need to do. Anyway, so this is Kentucky. So you notice the population, and then I'm zoomed in a little bit so you can see it. You notice that the growth is faster than the population. And there's this interesting divot. But right before the 2020 election, there's a nice little extra surge. Sounds familiar? Voter rolls right before the election. This is because Judicial Watch sued them in 2019 and they went right back again. And so it's a beautiful example of why lawsuits don't do the job for us. And it's not just one county. I just don't worry about reading the numbers. Just everything in red is a county that has more people in it, more people in the voter rolls than people. So it's not just like the big blue counties. It's all over the state. That's a problem. I already told you about this from LA. Okay. So, and I already told you about this, right? So that's the point. But wait, Frank, how is all this manipulation possible? Well, of course, it's machines, right? And by the machines, I don't just mean the thing you put your ballot in. There's a system for registering people. There's people for maintaining the rolls. There's systems for sending out ballots, for receiving ballots, for checking signatures, processing envelopes. There are like a dozen systems that are all working together. And they're all connected, and nobody denies they're all connected. The only argument is whether the tackle is connected. Everybody else agrees everything's connected. And it's complicated. I could spend all night describing this to you. You wouldn't be happy. I wouldn't be happy. Let's just get rid of it all. Let's just vote Amish. All paper, no machines. That's the right way to vote. And whenever you say that, so if you go to a clerk and you say, we want to vote all paper and no machines, they're going to say, oh, we're not allowed to do that because of handicapped people. Now, you guys should vote on paper anyway, right? You mail ballots to everybody. So actually, that's pretty easy. But in most states, they'll say, oh, no, we can't do that. By law, we have to have machines for handicapped people. So this is when I was introduced my daughter now. She's 26. And when I was voting in the 2022 primary, she looked over my shoulder and she's like, oh, Daddy, I love Joe. I love John. She knows these guys because whenever I'm in Ohio or Kentucky, I always bring her with me. And she knows all the politicians. And so she said, so I said, she's going to vote. So I took her to vote for her very first time in 2022. She wore her vote on the shirt and she voted on paper. And we only had one problem, and that's that it wasn't a secret ballot because she went into the voting booth and she said, I love Joe. I love and she voted for all the guys she loves. And everybody, but I looked up around the room and everybody had a big goofy grin on their face. There must have been 50 people in their vote because, of course, it's the sweetest thing ever, right? It was awesome. But it dawned on me. This is the right way for us all to vote. We need to be all together. We need to be voting together on election day. And it's a celebration, isn't it? And it's a time for us to get together and the community get together. And what gave me the idea is that in Ohio, 60,000 Amish people came out to vote for the very first time in 2020. Exactly. And the reason they did that is because DeWine was imposing COVID restrictions on it. Rhino governor was imposing COVID. And so what happened? The pain level got up, so they woke up, and then they all voted, 60,000. And that's what gave me the idea for a vote on it. So around the country, as the pain level keeps increasing, we're waking more and more people up. At least they were, and Michigan, they're starting to vote too. In fact, I was just with the Mennonite team in Michigan 2 weeks ago, and they were given instructions on how to vote. So there's like a whole community of Mennonites that are going to vote because of the pain level going up, right? And that's the point. Now, if you say, oh, but we want to do it all by hand and all without machines, people always say, the clerks will tell you, oh, no, it's not feasible. Of course it's feasible. All of Europe does it in a single day. We used to do it in this country in a single day. For 200 years, we did it that way. We were only 10% smaller 20 years ago when we were mostly this way anyway. There's no reason we can't. You just have to get organized. Gee, that's what precincts are. You just have to get organized. How about that? And we don't have to reinvent this wheel. They have paper in Europe, they have paper poll books, paper ballots, everything's transparent all day. The local people count the ballots, it's over in one day. And guess what? Everybody trusts it because everybody is watching every part of it. So this is how I think you should count ballots in your county. This is my favorite way. Mike Lindell has a faster way. He says he's probably right. He is right out into it. But this is my preferred way. Because it's a spectacle. It's a spectacle. And this is what happens. We call it the Cajun clothesline. We spent $47 at the hardware store. Very expensive equipment. We bought 100 clothespins. This is a 12-issue ballot because they always say, well, France is easy because they only have a few issues. Well, this is 12 issues, front and back. So I have 6 citizens here, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, tallying the races. On the back, it's 1 Republican and 1 Democrat, and they're all tallying. And so by the time the ballot gets to the end, Every issue or every candidate's been counted 3 times on the front or twice on the back. So it's triple checked or double checked. And they've got this really sophisticated counting system. When the guy runs out of clothespins, they know that they've done 100 ballots. So they stop and they say, okay, let's compare tally sheets. If all the tally sheets agree, they strap the rubber band around the tally sheets on the ballots. They do the next time. And they just do that until they're done. These guys did 2.5 hours. They did 1,000-person precinct, 2.5 hours. And it's very efficient. It's very fast, very cheap. But here's why I like it. This doesn't solve the problem of the counterfeit ballots. You don't know whether these are real or not, right? These could be counterfeit ballots. But more than half the people in the United States don't trust our elections anymore. They say the whole thing's rigged, the machines are rigged. This allows them to trust the counting process because they see their neighbors doing the counting. And if you want, you can put a camera right on this side and one on the other side, and you can even show it while people watch it on their computers at home. They can give their own tally. Then everybody would trust the counting process, right? And so I prefer this. It's a spectacle. It creates an impression that the people can trust the counting process because their own neighbors are doing it. Yeah.
Isn't it true that people had to go there to vote? That's about the ballot also.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is the second half of the problem, right? We didn't talk about how the ballots get in. We just talked about how they get counted here. Yes. But you're right. If we made people show up, then you'd make sure every ballot that came in was from who you think it's from. Yeah. Oh, sorry. He was saying, he was saying, but if everybody showed up in person, then you'd be sure that every one of those ballots was real. And that's exactly true. That's why I think you need single day voting with photo ID. You can have some absentee, like for military people, and maybe there's a couple of disabled people that might need it. But it's a small number, and so the clerk can do due diligence on every one of those and make sure that you can't do due diligence on all 58,000 of your voters. Yes.
You said every ballot voted 3 times.
It's counted 3 times.
Why not 6? No.
Because it's two.
Because they didn't all count, but they didn't all count every issue. They divided up the issues,
right,
so that everything was triple checked on one side, and of course it could only be double checked on the back. Right. To keep it moving fast, right, they didn't all count everything. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, good. So anyway, everybody understand what I'm describing here? Yes. It's very simple, very cheap, and it restores faith in the counting process. But my favorite part about it is that it's all online. That's a nice joke. But Dr. Franklin, machines are connected to the internet. We already know this. I think I made that point already. But let me just make one more point while I'm on this topic. You might have seen a few months ago that Professor Halderman hacked into the machines right in front of the judge in Georgia court. Yeah. Okay. So I like court cases because it informs the public. I've been working a lot lately in Georgia, and it's not going to change anything in Georgia. I'm telling you. The lawsuit's not going to fix it. Anybody know who hired Professor Halderman? Hillary Clinton. You're right.
What?
Hillary Clinton hired him in 2017 because remember, it was Hillary screaming Russia, Russia, Russia for years. Okay? In other words, the Democrats are complaining about how insecure the elections, and they hired Professor Halderman to prove it. And now the Republicans are complaining. So what are you going to do? Keep going back and forth? Keep going back and forth? Why don't we just fix it already? Right? Yeah. That's the problem. Anyways, I was worth mentioning. I can tell you more stories, but I'm gonna catch the chase because I think I can tell you stories all night. We do this every day, all the stories. Let's talk about your data, yes? And then I'll tell you what the solution is. So here's your whole state. Oh, it's not she.
Yeah, she's gone.
She okay. I made this slide a while back, but
You got in trouble.
yeah. That's good. You didn't have to go to this account. Or is she a guy? I don't know. All right. 1960 to present, this is the number of people in your voter rolls. You notice it's kind of interesting little shape. There's some interesting turning points here. Like right here, this is interesting. This is right after NVRA, the National Voter Registration Act. That was 1993. That's when the federal government started giving states money to implement systems to get people into the voter rolls. And that's like people started doing stuff at DMVs and Department of Motor Vehicles. Then there's another little interesting inflection point, right? You notice how it changes. And that's when you switch to electronic machines in 2002 at Health America Vote Act. And then you notice there's this other really interesting little surge here. That's after you added motor voter in 2014. So everybody who gets a driver's license is automatically put your motor rolls here. Anybody who gets a car registered, anybody gets social services, automatically is put in. So that's, you can see that.
By the way, it really is automatic.
Yeah.
Because
I know.
they give you a checkbox to not be included in your motor vote.
Right.
And I got submitted anyway.
You unchecked it and you were submitted anyway, yes. I hear that story all the time. By the way, illegal aliens who get driver's licenses and buy cars and registrations are automatically put in too. So that should tell you something.
Checkbox says I am not a illegal alien. I guess if you break into the country, you're like, well,
Yeah.
I'm
Clean this building or something, yeah. So that's who's registered in your state, the whole state. I'm going to do your count in a second. And then this is who's voted in every one of your elections. And you notice there's a little pattern: federal, midterm, federal, midterm, federal, midterm, federal. You know, it's like presidential, midterm, because people turn out more and turn in ballots more for presidential election. And notice there's a jump in your voting all of a sudden, right there. What happened? That's when NVRA happened. Okay, and then there's another big jump in your voting. When did that happen? That's when you have electronic machines. You can actually see the effect in your turnouts. Machines shouldn't change the turnout. How you count the ballots shouldn't change how many there are. It should simply change how fast they count, right? It should be faster. It just seems to keep taking longer and longer.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, you can see that. Notice this huge turnout in 2018 you had. More than all the federal elections, except for the 2016 election. That's a huge jump in your midterm elections. Huge jump. And when I point that out, in other states, they always say, "Oh, Dr. Frank, that's because we have a special issue that year in 2018, a very important midterm." And I say, "Yeah, it's in absolutely every state. Every state had this huge midterm turnout. It's not just there." And then, of course, you have a ridiculous turnout here. I just want to show you a couple of things about this. This is your 18 and older population in the state. It only goes up to 2022. This black actually went above. These are how many the Secretary of State reported was in the rolls for the elections, but that's before they delete voters. So, in other words, we've gone up to about 100% registration, which is ridiculous. I can show you a couple of things here. What am I doing here? I guess I accidentally did that. Oh, yes. So you notice this is growing faster than your population. And why? Because you're just automatically putting in people that you didn't used to put in. If I show you the trend now, not the absolute number, so I just brought the blue line down. You see me, I'm bringing the blue line down. See all this in here? That is 640,000 more registered voters than your population trend, out of about 300 to 3 million. So 6 out of 10 is about 1/5. So that's about 20% already. And that's just more than your population trend. So it's a simple comparison. That's not how many people are dirty in your rolls. Just want you to see that number. So that's already 1 in 5. So when I tell you 1 in 4 or 1 in 3, you can believe it. All right, here's Goose. It looks like you're a pretty flat population for a long time. That sound about right?
Yeah.
Been pretty flat for a while. Here's your voter rolls. And so this particularly jumps out at you, doesn't it? It's the same problem that the whole state has, yes? And if I show you month to month, I took the time to download month-to-month data for you. You'll notice that it didn't go up gradually. It went up very suddenly. Your voter rolls very suddenly in like just over a period of a month or two in 2016, right before the 2016 election. And then it's been tracking, and guess what? It's still climbing. The population is waning, but your rolls are climbing. Why are your rolls growing when your population is waning? It shouldn't work that way, should it? But it is. And then here are the number of people who voted in every one of your elections. Every 2 years, I'm showing you here. And you notice you also have a huge turnout in the 2018 election, so you weren't exempted. And then here's your federal. 2020 election, and look, your midterm is humongous turnouts. So I like the way Seth Keshel puts this. He says, this was them getting us the new normal, establishing the new normal so we wouldn't notice this future changes. In other words, they're stuffing a lot of ballots now, and now they're just building. You notice, once again, you have the same problem, your steeper growth in your population trend. I just want you to see up close that little surge that's in your county. But something else, I just want you to see that it's every single county. So I went super fast.
Yes.
No.
That's an algorithm. He says it's orchestrated. That's an algorithm. I'm going to put these online on my Rumble channel. That's what I was working to do. I just made this morning for every county in the state. I just want you to see that it's every one. But think about something else. If your rolls just continued the trend they were on, whoa, you'd have more people voting than you have people in the rolls, right? That's why they have to inflate the rolls. They need the credit line. They need the buffer of names you can stuff ballots for. You can't, they have to inflate the voter rolls to give them room to stuff. That's now, I did this for every county, and I showed it to you quickly, but you can see all the counties. It's hard to see this way, isn't it? Because they're big counties and small counties. So what I did was, so you can see them all at once, is I put it on the percent scale. Put it on a percent scale. You can see the way your rolls used to be random in all your counties, and then you can see them starting to come into sync right here. This is when you add machines. This is when you add electronic machines, and then you can see what happened after voter. They all just gone. Did every one of your counties grow at the same moment or anything like that? No. Did your local clerk do that? No. This is obviously central control, just like in all the other states. I've done it month to month now since 2014 to present for every single one of the counties. Once again, it's hard to see the small ones, isn't it? Because the big ones. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to normalize it 100%. So you can see that every single county had that same surge right before the 2016 election, and they're all climbing. I guess all your counties are growing now. Except Wheeler, there's an interesting exception. So we need to meet the Wheeler clerk and find out what's going on. It looks like they had to clean their voter rolls, or they purged their voter rolls or something. There's like 18 seconds. Well, actually, that would explain it. But they only lost one. Because but if it's a small county and you're the clerk and you know every person, you can't get through that, can you? That's the point of small precincts. You know, precinct chairs used to be responsible for this job. Yeah. You had 1,000-person precincts, and each precinct had a chair, and their job was to keep the rolls clean in each precinct. And we gave that up, didn't we? We relinquished our control of our elections to these other systems. And it's the same way we did the same with the government. We started paying other people to pay the government. Started paying other people to teach our children. How's all that working out for us? Okay, that's the problem. So the solution is the same in all those cases. Take it back local. Here's the election turnout for all those elections. So I've been busy. It's hard to see the small ones because the big ones, so I'm going to normalize it. Are you ready? This is the turnout of their election. So the turnout seems to be somewhat random. You can see them coming in the sync as soon as you add the machines, and now they're like syncing right up. This is why I can predict the number of 18, 19, 20-year-olds, etc. in every county, because they're all voting in the exact same proportions, not just by proportion, but also by age. And I can predict that. It's preposterous. For example, here's Goose. This is for the 2020 election. This blue curve is the number of people who live here by age. So it looks like you don't have a university here. And it looks like most people are around 65, so it's an older community. Goose is an older community, yeah? Yeah. The gray curve is who's in your voter rolls, active and inactive, the gray curve. The black curve is who's considered active. In your state, everybody active gets a ballot. The red curve is who voted in 2020 by age. Just look at the black curve and the red curve for a minute. Do they look a lot alike?
Yes.
Wow.
That's what I showed in absolute in scientific proof. Mike. All I have to do is go into a state and look at one county, for example, Coos. Take the ratio between the black curve and the red curve, assume it's the same in every county, and then predict all the other counties. Now, when I do that, I didn't choose Coos County for this job, I chose another county. See this light blue curve under the red curve? That's my prediction of what the red curve is going to be. And this R is called the correlation coefficient. I'm predicting the ballots by age based upon who's registered. In other words, well, I have an election. I'm telling you everybody's going to vote. How many are going to vote? It's like, already. That's crazy.
That's just it. Nobody's vote is being counted.
It's something else that's going on.
Yeah.
But here's another way to look at the data. Do you notice that the population, that blue curve, and the red curve, it's like every single person above 70 is voting. That doesn't make sense
No,
either,
is
does it?
that the way it is in every county? Because Polk County was the same way. So is that,
You've got it.
Well,
That's just
in the whole state of
in
Oregon,
the
so
whole
every
state, in the
person,
whole county and
even
every
dead,
county
let's
in the
say,
US.
Here's Columbia. Okay, so here was Coos. Here's Columbia. Here's my prediction, 0.999. It's even better than Coos, which was only 0.998. Oh, it's
Yeah.
bad. Okay. All right. So if this number's a 1, it means my prediction is perfect. It's a part per million accuracy. This is ridiculous. Okay. It's supposed to, in real life, when you're dealing with people, if you get coefficients around 0.6, 0.7, that's a very strong prediction in social science. Okay. This is perfect. This is not real. This is mathematical. Okay. That's Columbia. Yeah, you want me to keep going? I can do the whole state.
so.
This is not real.
Everyone in Oregon over 70 or over voted.
Always.
Well, you're saying every.
Every registered voter.
See see the blue curve?
Yeah.
This is every person.
Yeah.
And it looks like everybody above 70 is registered in Yamhill
And voted.
and voted.
Only as oldies.
Have you?
That ain't natural.
That ain't natural, but.
Everybody took their pills, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Is this big?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is absolutely controlled. And that's, I figured out about a dozen algorithms in the early days, especially when I had access to everything in Pennsylvania. And I was able to reverse engineer what they were doing. And that's why I can predict it. It's a pretty straightforward equation. I don't talk about it anymore. I used to teach people mathematics, but it doesn't work.
So what is the hub then?
Where's the hub?
Is it Beijing? Yeah, that's.
I think-
Oh,
I think-
that's a good.
There are, I think there are at least 3 hubs.
Right, Denver's gotta be one.
It's one of them, yeah. There are at least 3. There's one in New York.
Right, and it's under here.
So they're definitely, but
For the CIA.
we could go into long statistical discussions of this, as you can tell I'd love to, but what I've learned is this just wakes people up. Because you look at that and you're like, that's not natural. And by the way, this is right from your Secretary of State's database. You ask for the Secretary of State to give you the data, and you can make my graph too. It's hard work, you have to know what you're doing, but you can do it. Okay, and you see the point I'm making?
Yep.
Nobody does this kind of work because it's a lot of work and you have to know what you're doing. And that's why clerks don't even know this is happening. Because you don't have a piece of software on your computer, they don't do this for you.
Well, my clerk knows everything because I tell him.
Oh, yeah, yeah, gotcha.
He
And
doesn't
that's
care.
Paul. See, I just showed you 4 counties. I can show you all. But I showed you the 4 that I'm at recently. And you know, just so you wouldn't realize I'm not cherry picking. Okay. I mean, it's a remarkable similarity, isn't it? I mean, everyone's following the same patterns. All right. I didn't talk about it, but I talked about turners. Turners where, let's say, here, I click 2 buttons. Let's say I have a voter roll, and let's say a county has 100 people that live in it, and then 10 of them, sorry, it's an automatic slide, I need to stop pushing the button. You have 100 people that live here, and let's say 10 move away and 10 move in. So you had 20 changes to the rolls. Like we call that a 20% churn. If you had 100, 10 added, 10 removed, we call that a 20% churn. Because there have been 20 changes to the roll. Okay, I don't know. What I do is I do that calculation for the entire state of Nebraska for every county over a 3-year period of time. and I noticed that the churn was the same in every county, but they were removing the same number of people who actually voted in the 2020 election, which is 12.6% on average. Every county in Nebraska had the same kind of churn. And when I showed that to the clerks, they said, well, you know, that's just because the college students are moving around. So I did a demographic study and said, no, you're adding them of all ages and you're removing them of all ages. And it's not just the college kids, it's the whole state. It's the whole state. And all the drafts are online on my Rumble-Tin. Feel free to download them and you can do them with kind of like counties. Guess what I did for you this morning? I calculated the churn for your county. For Peace County. And what did I find? I found in January of 21, you had 52,961 voters in there. And you can see how many, what I took one snapshot of their voter rolls once per year for 4 different years. So it's a 3-year span. And I did one copy of your voter rolls, and I showed you how many people were removed between that snapshot and that snapshot, and how many were. So you notice that January 21, which is right next to the election, 2,300 people removed and 4,400 more. So now you have a little bit bigger rolls, right? But you removed a bunch, added some, that's bigger rolls. You removed a bunch, added some, and then bigger rolls. See that?
It's saying we didn't build that many houses.
But I've broken it down. These are the active voters and the inactive voters. It's about 10% inactive. But you notice that you're removing active voters more than inactive voters. What you'll hear the clerk say is, oh yeah, after the elections, we removed the dead people and the inactive voters. You're removing 10 times as many active voters as you are inactive voters. Active voters. Okay? See here? Maybe it's 8-1 here, but you get the point. You're removing way more active people than inactive. If the Secretary of State official record for 2020 was in Coos County, 37,825 votes ballots were cast in York County. The rolls as of January of 21, that's just 2 months later, already was reduced by 4%. I'm sorry, no, it was reduced by only 0.3%. But it was already down. And what I did is I show you how many people were in each roll. Let me skip that line from out of that official number, that copy of the rolls, January 21, already 124 people who voted had been removed. Who voted in 2020. In the January, a year later, you removed 1,642. So now you're down to 96% of the people who voted in 2020 were still in the vote. And then in the January 2 years later, you removed even more. And by March of this year, you removed 4,800 people who voted in that election. That's about 12.7%. Wait a minute. You removed 12.7% of the people who voted in your Nebraska removes 12.8% in every one of their counties. What am I going to find? You know what I'm going to find in your state. And I've already done Polk County, and it's the same number. So in other words, when I do all of them, I'm about to run off here for a few days. I always do calculations where I am, giving you the hot new stuff. Your voter rolls have changed. Your churn over a 3-year period is 40%. That means there have been 40% of your rolls have changed. You've added and removed 40%. Out of your 50,000 or so people, did you have 2 out of 5 of them move in or out? Who's in control of your rolls? The clerk? These are your own copies from the Secretary of State of your own voter rolls. And what I've done is I've made lists of all of these things, and I'm going to give them. And you're going to know every person they removed, every person they added, and we use that to figure out where the fraud is. Yeah, her they need.
We have again and again, we work at the fair, we work at the headquarters, people coming in and saying, I was changed, my voter registration was changed. Almost.
A lot of people.
Never would they change out of being a Democrat into they would be changed from being a Democrat into independent, non-affiliated, or even into Democrats.
You mean Republican?
Yeah. It's always one direction.
Yeah. People, like if you go in with your driver's license and you're a registered Republican, you're going to notice change from being a Republican to a Democrat. And what that does is stops you from voting in the primary.
Yeah.
That's happened to all over the country.
It's epidemic.
Yes.
In 2020, I don't know if you guys realize that I was working hard in the Republican and we calculated all of our numbers to that it was the whole state. Gateway Pundit is the only one that reported it, but right before the 2020 primary, 80,000 Republicans had their party affiliation changed. And then the fascism came in.
Yes.
The Secretary of State called the hotline. Remember the
Yes.
Judicial Watch hotline? They discovered the hotline. She called the hotline and had Facebook and Twitter because they formed these groups. My party was changed, Oregon. They formed these groups, and everybody was telling their story. Oh, I got the wrong ballot.
Right.
And our county clerk in Douglas County says, "Well, you're a registered Democrat. There's nothing I can do. You got the right ballot."
Did the local change that?
No,
No, the state changed that.
Right.
Or somebody manipulating the system changed that. That's the whole argument that I'm making. The reason you have all these issues is because you're not doing it. Somebody else is doing it. And having it centralized and electronic allows me from my basement in Ohio to mess with it. And I'm not even the best hacker I know. There are a lot of good hackers out there that can do this mess. So this is a huge problem because you're not doing it. So the solution is the 7 steps. And you have to think of this, you have to think of this like you think of this like a war you're doing. You just think of this like. All right.
So Dr. Frank,
Yeah.
my question was, at this point, when our county clerks, because I have been blasting my county clerk with all sorts of fraudulent information that I found.
And how's that working?
He denies it, right? So
that's another good strategy. Don't be insane.
well, yeah.
How many times are you going to fly into the window?
Right.
That's what you're doing.
But see, that's why I'm running against him. But at
Right.
this point, let's say I know that our county clerk is compliant, basically, right? Compliant to the Secretary of State, to the system. Denying me, denying Mike Renzel, denying, he spoke badly about Trump, all this stuff, right? So yeah, because Trump is a conspiracy theorist for actually saying the elections were frauded. So when I say that, it means that they know and they don't care and they're compliant. That means he's committing treason as well, right? Even though he doesn't control it, but he knows.
He's compliant.
Okay.
He's complicit.
Right. So he can potentially go down for treason as well.
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
there are guys that are going to hang and the other guys that are going to prison. There's 2 compliance.
Okay.
Thinking of like the war, we've been going around for years telling everybody we're in 15 Russian war, taking over our country right under our nose without firing a shot. And if you haven't seen his new movie, you've got to see it. See his guy, it's called Flynn. Yeah. It's a great movie. I was having dinner with him about a month ago. There was about 12 of us around the table. And he stood up at one point because somebody asked a question. And he said, I don't know a more serious way to express this. And he took his arm like this. And he says, the situation is grave. Just like that. And he says, there isn't anything more serious than grave. And he says, that's the situation we're in. And that is compelling. This is the guy who spent his career taking over other countries using their weapons. Okay, so he knows what he's talking about. Now, his motto is local action equals national impact. Well, guess what? I got there eventually, but it took me 2 years of banging against the window before I realized that you're not fixing it from the top down, you're fixing it from the bottom up. It's local. And that's why Oregon's on fire. What else we can do? I'm going to do what I tell you. Here's Attorney Mill saying, secure your county and the nation will follow. Same message. Tony Shute in Pennsylvania. I love this guy. She's out of the PA. Education is key. The fix is local. Stop trying to fix it statewide. Fix Coos. Fix Coos. That is your target. Don't try to take Berlin. Take Normandy. Take what you can. Let's look. We're in the middle of a Bezmenov revolution. I like the way Trevor Loudon puts it. He says we're 80% of the way complete. They're just about taking over our country. And I've been reading The Art of War. I've been reading all these books on war, and because I'm not a scientist, but man, I'm learning to think like a military man. Why? Because I have to. Because we're in a war. Yep. All right. I've been reading lots of books like that because I'm trying to learn faster than the hard way. It's a fast way to learn and a slow way to learn. My father always used to say, smart men learn from their mistakes, but wise men learn from other people's mistakes. So I'm learning faster right now. Chris Ann Hall, love her to death. I've been running all my constitutional strategies by me. She pointed out the key principle here is that the Constitution is not a list of your rights. It's a list of your obligations. You know, for example, in the Second Amendment, you don't really have a right to bear arms. You have an obligation to maintain a well-regulated militia. That's why you have to have the arms. I mean, it is a right to bear the arms, but really it's an obligation. You're supposed to have a well-regulated local militia. And by the way, if you don't right now have a well-regulated militia, that's very important. I cannot stress this enough. As I travel the country, I'm hearing all kinds of interesting rumblings. And you need a militia to defend this beautiful town of yours. Better have one. If you don't have one, get one going. I noticed that I flew out of my house February 8th this year. As I was pulling out the front door of my house.
My battery is just about to die, and before it dies, I need to stop this live stream so it doesn't continue on. So I want to thank you all for joining me. If you want to find out more, just Google Dr. Frank, go to his Rumble channel. He's on Rumble, and you can download all of those charts that he showed you. And I want to thank you for tuning in. I'll see you Friday night for the Friday night rant, 8 o'clock this Friday. And so till then, carry on, America. Carry on.